My grandmother is wonderful. She has a laugh that can make the birds sing, but she's been quite ill lately, and the hospital bills have been adding up. I just want to do my share. It's kind of tough for me because I was never very good with money. I just seem to take what the Red Cross pays me and I give it right back to them. But I am going to help my gram. She is the one who taught me it is better to be truthful and good than to host a podcast. Welcome in to Additional Crew. This is the spoiler heavy film reviews that we do bi-weekly. We choose movies that we just kind of want to watch. There's no specific rhyme or reason. This week, we bring you two con men that try to settle their rivalry by betting on who can swindle a young American heiress out of $50,000 first. That is, of course, Frank Oz's first muppet-less film, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels from 1988. Now, before we jump into all of that, and we will momentarily, let me introduce your co-hosts. I am Nick. You may know me from the other podcast. And with me is Janice, my
Hello,
lovely, lovely co-host.
hello, hello, hello.
Um, for this particular pod, we're gonna jump into the movie pretty directly. We've added some sections and we're kind of playing around with some structure stuff, see how this feels. I'm very confident that it will make the listening experience a little bit easier. And to do that, we're gonna jump in pretty quick. But what's up, Janice? How you doing?
Doing good. Excited to review this movie. It was pretty hilarious. And probably one of the first real Steve Martin movies I have seen, which is kind of embarrassing to say, but I've mostly just seen
It's
his
all right.
like rom coms.
You only watch Cheaper by the Dozen 1 through 40, right? Um,
um, mm-hmm.
Now, and I do want to be clear and say thanks, Janice, because Janice helps run the Instagram. She's what's made it look so much better recently. So if you are watching us because of the Instagram or any of the content that you see on there, Janice is the one who has been changing that. So very much appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, I'm gonna try my best not to do this, but if I slip up and call her baby girl, that is my bad.
You can call me that anytime you want.
Love it. So okay, like I said, we're jumping pretty directly into the movie on this one, so we're gonna jump in. But first off, we are bringing you to the segment, their very best. In this segment, it's pretty pretty simple to understand. Each host will explain what they knew about an actor before going into the film, or what their favorite role previous to watching this film was. So, as Janice just mentioned, Steve Martin. We're gonna start with Steve Martin. So, Janice, what did you know about Steve Martin before we watched this film?
Well, I guess I was first introduced to Steve Martin in the 90s when I was under 10 years old, and that was through the movie Father of the Bride. And I just really loved that movie. I don't know, it was probably on some sort of cable channel, and I just remember I always watched it anytime it came on. So that was really my first experience seeing Steve Martin, this gray haired, funny guy. And of course, we saw him at the Cuthbert Amphitheater here in Eugene, him and Martin Short, which was really cool to see. So, but yeah, this was a whole new movie for me to see him in. And I started to appreciate him a lot more because I liked his acting in the rom coms and like other cheesy movies I've seen, but those definitely did not do his talent justice. So I'm glad I got to see this movie as kind of my first dose of his comedic acting.
It's kind of crazy too that Steve Martin, he tours around the country. He plays banjo, and I'm sure that I'm not doing him a lot of favors here, not knowing the band name, but he's really good at the banjo, and it's kind of like this weird comedy show done with actual banjo songs and a whole entire band behind him. Very bluegrass vibes. But it's pretty common knowledge at this point. But if you don't know, Steve Martin is a wonderful banjo player. You should look it up. It's pretty wild. Um, but before this movie, my I had seen quite a bit of Steve Martin films, and like I think for me, I'd always considered him a little cheesy, but there were two films that I really did like growing up, and that was Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah.
And that's one of where he's more serious and he's a little bit more sarcastic, but it's him and John
Oh
Candy,
yeah, I remember that.
and John Candy's probably really the main star of that movie because Steve Martin plays the straight man, whereas John Candy plays the guy who's out in left field.
Mhm.
Um, and but it's just a wonderful movie, and it's kind of like this coming together of two different people in completely different situations. We could use a lot more of that.
And were they kind of
Um,
against each other in that movie too, if I can remember
hmm
correctly.
hmm
Okay.
They really annoy each other. They got like two different personality types completely, but they end up get like finding each other in a way, finding what to appreciate about that.
Yeah, I think I remember them having really good chemistry in that movie. I think I've only seen that once, and you showed it to me.
It's awesome. The other movie I remember specifically with Steve Martin was The Three Amigos. I love that movie. That was Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Chevy Chase, and it's been a long time since I've seen it, so I can't speak to like favorite scenes, but I thought it was hilarious as a kid. Um, Watched it a bunch of times. I think his name was like Lucky or Dusty or something. Um, and I just remember
Yeah.
just really enjoying it.
Why do I keep thinking he was in the movie with the plant that ate humans? Was he in that movie?
He was, and that movie would have got a mention here if he had a more significant role. He was the
Little
dentist.
Shop of Horrors. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the
Right. Okay.
dentist, and he got fed to the plant. Spoilers for Little Shop of Horrors. Hoilers? That's not right.
Whatever
Horrors.
you want it to be. And he did he get
There we
his
go.
start on SNL? He
Maybe
wasn't.
feels
Well,
right.
it does feel right.
Feels right. I don't know.
We'll look it up.
That honestly is probably it. But I don't. I never saw him on SNL myself, outside of maybe him like hosting randomly in the 2000s. But that does feel like something that happened. And well, we'll talk about that later. Michael Caine. What do you know about Michael Caine?
Well, we were talking about this earlier. And really, I could not think of any movies off the top of my head with Michael Caine in them, but I just know that I've seen him play a butler in a few things. So I'm just imagining him as a butler because I'm like, I know I've seen this guy before, and I feel like he had a metal tray in his hand and he was serving people drinks. And that's
It's
really
got to be
sad
Batman.
because now I looked up all the movies earlier today that he's been in, and it's been so many movies. And I have seen a lot of them, but there's a lot of them I haven't seen. So I'm sorry. It's embarrassing. I don't know. I don't know a lot of Michael Caine movies.
It's okay. I think that like there was a certain genre that was really popular in the mid 2000s to late 2010s that made me really love Michael Caine. And you'll see that by like my two favorite movies from Michael Caine are The Prestige and Children of Men, and they're both kind of like these very serious movies that just like take different roles. Like in The Prestige,
Mhm.
he plays Cutter, and The Prestige is a Chris Nolan film. So Chris Nolan probably the most famous director going right now, besides potentially Scorsese, and even then Scorsese's really old and Nolan's not, so he might get the nod. But like Prestige and Memento were my two favorite Chris Nolan movies, and a huge part of that was Michael Caine's role as Cutter. He's just so good in this movie. And that film, if you haven't seen it, it's about magicians,
Now I'm
and
looking at more.
I don't want to give away much because it's awesome. Yeah, and also then Children of the Men was this wickedly good sci-fi slash dystopian movie where people were unable to have babies anymore, and he plays this role in Children of Men, and I can't remember his character's name off the top of my head, but he's got long hair, he looks like a hippie, and if you can imagine Michael Caine with long hair looking like a hippie, it's pretty wild. But he's also just so good in this kind of like mentor role. Like it was either butlers or mentors around this time, but in those mentor roles, he chose fantastic films. So like it was The Prestige and Children of Men, and after watching those two, it was like, wow, this guy is amazing. It's probably been true his whole career, in my opinion. But those two knock it out the park. You want to see Michael Caine at his best? That's where I say look to. Um,
And he was in Miss
and then quickly,
Congeniality.
oh
Oh,
yeah, and how many times have you seen Miss Congeniality?
I've seen it quite a
I
bit.
think.
It was one of the movies that I grew up on. You know, being a young millennial or a
Mm-hmm.
'90s kid, early 2000s kid. I've seen Miss Congeniality a lot, and I liked his role in that. I think I remember he was one of the guys that was like helping Sandra Bullock's character become more like feminine, and he was
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
totally disgusted by her. So he did a really good job in that movie too.
See, it's wild because that was for sure like Sandra Bullock's core, right? Like this was one of those movies that got her huge.
hmm Yeah.
And pardon me,
hmm
sorry, I had to sneeze, so turn the mic off. So I've seen Miss Congeniality probably 2 or 3 times. It was on either Comedy Central or another one of those things a bunch, and I did watch it a couple times, and it's crazy. I can't remember Michael Caine in that movie at all.
Wow. And he was
I know,
in
I know.
Austin Powers. Oh my gosh.
That doesn't shock me. Michael Caine has been in
He probably
tons of
played a
films.
butler in Austin Powers.
That's it. And then I do want to bring up the director on this one because the director's something of a little bit of a legend. So director Frank Oz, he's done just some great movies, and we're going to talk about Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. But before this, I had already loved What About Bob and The Dark Crystal, and those are two wildly different movies. So The Dark Crystal is super fantasy puppet based movie, just wild out there. It's a whole new universe, a whole new story. You can't really explain it using other films except for Jim Henson's puppets. You know, it's like a Jim Henson puppet movie that is just so far out there. It's great, and he directed that one, and then he also directed Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and then What About Bob? And What About Bob? And is just this Bill Murray film where he goes and meets up with his, or he attempts to meet up with his psychiatrist. What is that guy's name? Um,
Oh,
Damn it!
yeah.
It's gonna come.
Mm.
It's gonna come to me in a second as soon as I'm done with this. The guy who is also in Jaws, unimportant, and it's an interesting film, pretty funny. It's a lot different as an adult than it is as a kid because as a kid I'm like, well, what about Bob? Let Bob come and hang out with you. And then as an adult who works a job, I'm like, hey, maybe I wouldn't want my clients with me on vacation. That doesn't gonna feel like a vacation. Um. Anyway,
And he
yeah. So
directed Indian in the Cupboard, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that movie like 100,000 times. Definitely a childhood staple. So that was cool to see.
It's pretty wild. This Frank Oz. We'll talk about him a little bit more later. Um. With that said, you want to just jump into the film we're talking about today?
Heck yeah.
Okay, so again, this is a movie about two con men that try to settle the rivalry by betting on who can swindle or bed a young American heiress out of $50,000 first. So it's Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. It's from 1988. It stars Steve Martin, Michael Caine. There's Glenn Headley. We didn't talk about her before because she hasn't been in a ton of roles, and then it's directed by Frank Oz. So at that time, I would say it was probably a pretty rock solid crew, and it still feels that way. We watched the Arrow restoration, which is like a 2K restoration on Blu-ray, and I personally want to start off saying I think it was fantastic. Um, let's talk a little bit about the story. So the story of this film is that you've got Freddie, Steve Martin's character, and Lawrence, that's Michael Caine's character. Freddie and Lawrence are two comments that come from just completely different walks of life. Freddie's an American. Lawrence is, I believe, a German. He lives in Germany. I don't know that he is German, or I mean, maybe he lives in France. It's shot in France.
Yeah, France. Yep.
And yeah, and so this American is coming over to Europe. He is just kind of a low grade con man who is learning that he can keep conning people for bigger and bigger sums, and he specifically tries to con women out of their money. Lawrence also specifically tries to con women out of their money, but he does it in a more, in his opinion, sophisticated manner for larger sums of money. So we've got big fish, small fish sort of thing. The small fish is coming in saying, "Hey, I could be a big fish too. Let me get in on this."
Hmm.
And the movie follows this role until they kind of butt heads and they make a bet to see who has to leave town. And the bet is based around Janet Colgate, played by Glenn Headley. And Janet Colgate is the seemingly pretty like naive, innocent, nice, and very giving woman
Too giving.
that they are going to then way too
Too
giving, and immediately
nice.
too. And they're like, okay, we can take advantage of her. Let's take her money, and they just have a competition, and that's where most of the comedy comes in. Freddie pretends to be someone whose legs stopped working because of an emotional incident. Lawrence pretends to be the doctor, and Janet gets stuck in the middle. Um, of course, the ultimate twist of this film is that Janet is the jackal. She's the ultimate con man, and she ends up stealing their money and leaving them.
Hmm.
You still do get a happy ending because she comes back and includes them in her next con. So, you get like a menage a trois of con men going on. Uh, I've seen a lot of con men movies and I've seen a lot of comedy movies, and for me, just from the get, this story feels pretty unique and
Yeah.
fresh, even for its time. It's from 1988. That's almost 30 years ago. No, oh, shoot, it's almost 40 years ago.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah.
And yeah, and for like even for con men movie, I don't feel like any of them really attempted this sort of like con men competition. Um, Especially not with the kind of character dynamics that they had in here.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was really interesting and everything. I mean, it was still super funny. Sometimes when you watch movies from a while ago, like 40 years ago, 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, it's like the jokes don't hit the same for some reason because it's just so different, like culturally or socially. But I think this movie did a really good job at maintaining the comedy.
Hmm. Hmm. And a lot of the comedy was just like we can talk about the acting and the characters included in this. Like a lot of the comedy between these guys was very physical and very almost body language oriented. So Steve Martin in this film, a lot of it was it wasn't exactly slapstick, but it was based on body control and how silly he could look. I mean, you think about all of those Ruprecht scenes where he's playing the brother that has
Yeah.
something,
Like,
and he's goofy. He moves strangely when he's banging the pots and jumping up and down. You can see that it's like something's different with this guy. And then Lawrence is always debonair. He's always too smooth for the situation. He never looks like he's out of place, even when he maybe should look like he's out of place. Uh,
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I thought the physical comedy was top notch. And like I said, this is kind of the first, I think, time I was introduced to Steve Martin's comedy. Like, I feel like we kind of just got all of it in this movie. Like, we got to see what he is capable of as a comedian. So, if nobody has really seen Steve Martin movies before or has seen him like at his peak in comedy, I feel like this is probably a good movie to start with to kind of see like how talented he is. Because I was honestly super impressed. Like I mean, I knew he was a comedian, but I guess I didn't know it was at that level. Like with the way he can move his body and his face and um, the improv and everything. It was awesome.
and I like the setup they have because like they're able to take both these two guys who are both con men, so they're very much like mischievous, but they set up one of those old timey comedy tropes, like the straight man and the fool, right? So Lawrence Michael Caine plays the straight man, and I can't imagine Michael Caine playing anything other than a straight man. And if you don't know the straight man and the fool, it's like imagine I would just Google it, but it's basically that one person plays it like they're a real person grounded in reality, and the other person plays it like they're just out there in left field, and then you have the comedy comes from the one person, the straight man, reacting to the
Mhm.
craziness that the fool
Mhm.
brings. And they were able to set that up even though they were both con men and they knew they were both con men. So there's this like level of they're hiding something from the third person. But even while they're hiding something from the third person, there's still one guy acting wild and doing some just insane stuff, and the other guy's like, okay, I just need to be the normal person in this situation, and I'll win this bet. And you end up with a lot of really silly things. Like a lot of the skits are based around that. I mean, like Ruprecht, Steve Martin is probably one of the funniest parts of the movie to me, and that whole entire thing is about how much can I make people cringe who are around me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I was going to say something about Michael Caine. Oh, like throughout those scenes with Steve Martin, where Steve Martin's just like acting completely crazy and everything, I kind of love that they kept in shots of clearly Michael Caine's like breaking character. I don't know if you noticed that too, but he kind of seemed like he looked like he was about to bust up laughing in a lot of those scenes. And it wasn't quite at that point, but it was at the beginning of the bust up laughter. And I kind of like that they kept that in there because it just kept the idea that it was a con and that we were kind of the insiders that knew about this con, and we saw the expressions between the two of them, but like the person who they were conning didn't see that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, and that's exactly it. Because it's funnier. Because imagine yourself in Michael Caine's position, Lawrence's position. You're trying to get something done. You're a businessman. You're really trying to get your business done. Like, sure, con man is a dirty business, but you are trying to get a business done. And in comes this guy just acting like a total buffoon, and it's gotta be hilarious. And but even better is Michael Caine also gets to act frustrated during it because the buffoon it does a pretty good job.
Mhm.
Uh, is I really liked it. I thought the acting was great personally. I can't like there's no holes that I can poke in the acting in this one because Steve Martin
Yeah, I agree.
either he's really great at acting or he's great at improv because if he missed his scenes or missed his cues, he picked it up immediately.
Yeah, I would say Um, maybe the part that was the most questionable with his acting for me was when he was pretending to be the rich guy, or he was being trained on how to act rich. When Michael Caine decided that he would take him on and help him, train him how to be a con man at a higher level. And during that montage where they're teaching uh, Freddie, Steve Martin, how to act rich, it just wasn't super believable to me. I don't know why. Um, and I don't know if maybe they meant to do it that way, but or maybe it's just because I know too much about Steve Martin's acting at this point, but like, I just couldn't believe him as like a rich person when he was acting like a rich person. But they didn't go too much into that anyway. So,
Yeah, my only thought is that maybe they meant like he was so bad at being like tight knit
yeah,
that he really couldn't even act that way, even when he was trying his best.
I think you're right, actually. I didn't think about this before, but like I had the assumption when Lawrence was teaching him how to be a rich character or a rich person to con these women, I had the assumption that the rest of the movie would be Freddie acting like a rich guy, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
immediately after that scene, it goes into him being the person with intellectual disability or whatever who's like banging pots and acting crazy. So maybe there's some like underlying message there, like saying like, so maybe I caught on correctly. I just didn't realize that until I just said it out loud, that maybe he was just not capable of
He's
acting
he's
that.
he's so ratchet he can't like pull it back
Like he couldn't
anymore.
be classy. Like they put him into these other characters that were just like so over the top, or like the guy, yeah, the guy in the wheelchair who was like a super sad pity party, and yeah, I just thought of that just now. So
Well, and it's great because part of it for me is that like they get Steve Martin, Freddie, to do all of these like you're right, pity or very physical related um cons, right? So he's the guy who's like, I'm not coming up with something complicated. I'm gonna be someone that they just feel bad for, so they give me cash. Whereas Lawrence is debonair. He is coming up with super convoluted, super complicated stories. He is the prince of somewhere we never learn about, but trying to rescue freedom fighters, so he needs money for the mission. And he's basically starting a cult to get money. And because he can't do anything other than act like a royalty of some sort. You know, he's like, I don't
uh,
have it in me to act down and dirty. I only have it in me to act like royalty, so I just pretend I'm royalty.
yeah,
Which is great because you do see that. I mean, like even scams nowadays, they're always like, "I'm a prince from Nigeria, give me money."
yeah. Okay, yeah, this is making a lot more sense to me now. The pieces are coming together, and now just even thinking about the end in that very last scene, um,
Hmm.
where he has to totally change his accent and be a little bit rough around the edges.
Uh, Speaking of Michael Caine, is so good at accents. When he switched from the British to the German accent, it was so smooth, and then he switched from the German to the Australian, and again, so smooth. I don't know how many takes he had to do that, but just like props to that guy for being able to switch accents like that.
Yeah, I really liked that last scene too, but we could probably talk about that later.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and talk about it now. What do you like about the last scene?
Okay. Let's see. Well, like I said, I really liked the, yeah, you just brought a whole bunch of things together when we were just talking about the different characters and how they can only play one role. But especially, I really liked seeing Janet's character change, because throughout the whole film, basically, she's just like this super vulnerable, like overly giving, overly generous character. Um, and we can we say that we end up finding out that she's the con
We
man?
for sure
Okay,
can. Hmm.
so something that stood out to me was in the film with Janet in particular. Um, when I first saw her, I immediately thought she was a con woman. I don't know what it was, if it was her outfit or like just the vibes she gave off in that scene when she like dropped something and then she lifts her head up and you see her like sunglasses and her red hat. Something about it gave con woman, right?
And you know, it's that red hat, I bet, because whenever women are wearing red in films, they're trouble.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was, but it was like something in her eyes, maybe. And I just was like, she's a con woman. And then as the story goes on, I start to think maybe I was wrong. I'm like, well, maybe I was wrong because she's just so sweet and so nice. She really wants to help these guys. But then at the same time, I'm thinking maybe this is part of her plan. But then as we just get deeper in, she had me fooled. You know what I mean? Like her
Hmm. Hmm.
character, I think she was changing her character with the situation she was in with these men. So she was slowly learning how she was supposed to act as a con woman to get what she needed out of the situation. Um, because it really wasn't until like that very end scene when they find out that she takes off with Lawrence's money on the plane, that I was right there with them. I was like, oh my god, she conned them. She conned all of us. You know what I mean? So I was actually really surprised by that.
And it's there was like a little bit of a point being made, and I enjoyed how consistent it was. So Freddie and Lawrence were talking about this, and Lawrence was like, "Well, women are the weaker sex," and Freddie says, "Listen, we're the weaker sex. Men don't live as long as women. We get more heart attacks, more strokes, more prostate trouble. I say it's time for a change. I say let them give us money. Let's live off them for a while." And that sounds like he's still kind of in a way digging at women, saying I can take their stuff, right?
Hmm.
But his point is made even more clear because ultimately Janet fools both of them completely and thoroughly,
Yeah,
and she steals their money. And I mean, like, let's say that it's deserved. So, also, nice little twist. Comedy movie with a twist.
yeah, I agree. I think it was deserved, and it was a whole wild ride because throughout the movie, like I didn't know whose side I was on. Like I would keep switching sides. I'm like, because I didn't know Janet was a con artist while we were watching the movie, and then I don't know, like they were just such believable con men and con people that I was rooting for certain sides, and I'm like, wait a minute, why am I rooting for this guy who's conning this lady just because he's in a wheelchair and he's such a good actor?
He's very charismatic. You're like, oh, I like this guy, which would make him a good con man.
Yeah, but then Lawrence actually started to fall for Janet, and that's what made me start taking his side because I'm like, oh, he's like falling in love with her, but it was confusing though because she was like clearly into Freddie. So, but yeah, I started liking Lawrence more at that point. I was more on his side at that point for some reason.
One thing I liked about Lawrence falling for her was just kind of this whole entire idea that he believes in his mind that he's some sort of Robin Hood. You know what I mean? Like he's like, I only steal from rich women who haven't done anything but inherit the money. I have a moral code to the cons that I do, and when she's so sweet, I can't possibly steal from her. I have to give back, and that's so funny to me because it's like on one hand, how can he possibly know without actually getting to know these women? On the other hand, they're all giving him money to help fight for freedom. Like
Yeah.
it's just silly. Like I thought it was a funny idea because it's like, and it probably wasn't as deep as I'm thinking right this second, but it was like even this guy can find justifications for his cons that still make him the good guy. You know,
Mhm.
whereas Freddy's just like, no, I just steal money from people. That's fine.
Yeah, Freddie don't give a fuck.
No, you don't. You don't.
He
And
he's just a
it's good.
purely sleazy. Like he's all in it for the money. He has no
Hmm.
emotional attachment. He did. Steve Martin did a really good job at playing that character.
We did. Um. Now, if you're ready to move on, I would like to introduce us to another new segment. 5 things you likely did not know. Pause
Ooh.
for music to play for a second. So that's 5 total, not 5 each. But so in the middle here, we are going to give you some cool, just information, just weird stuff about these people, or about the film, or about the filming locations, or whatever you have. I'll go ahead and kick us off here. So number one, Frank Oz, the director, has a prolific voice acting career. It's arguably more legendary than his directing career. I would almost say it's easily more legendary than his directing career. Some highlights include The Muppets, where he played Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Fozzie the Bear, even Animal, and so many more voices over so many seasons. Sesame Street, he played Bert, Cookie Monster, and a ton of the other characters that are all over the place for 916 episodes.
Wild.
916. First, that's a cool number. Shout out Sacramento. Second,
Hmm.
that's a crazy amount of episodes to do for anything. And third, Yoda from Star Wars Episode 5 and 6. the best Star Wars episodes. He's the Yoda. He's the dude who everyone quotes when they're like, "Are you ready? I am." Or
Oh my
that's
gosh.
the worst quote ever. Like the "Do or do not. There is no try." That's Frank Oz. It's wild. He's a director.
Oh my
This dude
gosh.
is. Once I started looking this up, I'm like, this guy has been around forever, and he just done so many crazy things. Frank Oz, this dude. I didn't know this. I was like, his name looks familiar, and apparently I've probably seen it almost every single day my kids are watching PBS and Sesame Street, and I don't even know that.
Oh my gosh. That is so cool. I didn't
It's
know he was
wild.
in so
Hit me
many
up.
things.
There's so many more too if you look it up. There's just so many more. I didn't even list all of them. Those are just the highlights. Hit me up with number two.
All right. So the I found out that the beach near Lawrence's mansion in the movie was made specifically for the film. So apparently, the beach, it was like a rocky beach before, a lot of big rocks, and they had to pull all those rocks off and then add all of the sand in to make it more of like a beach for the film. And they ended up, well, the reason they did that is because they couldn't find like any unoccupied beaches in France. And then they said, Michael Caine specifically said, and if they did find any beaches, the few people that would be on them were usually topless. So I guess that's a thing in France, which I didn't know.
Not great for a movie that's going to be released in America, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Uh, um, Speaking about getting rocks off, uh, number three, the film was originally written for Mick Jagger and David Bowie. This is following their hit music video "Dancing in the Streets." Their schedules did not end up working out, and David Bowie actually mentioned in an interview that it was a shame, as he actually really ended up liking this film and enjoying it. He really wishes he could have been in it. Um, can you imagine this movie with David Bowie as Lawrence and Mick Jagger as Freddie? One, it wouldn't have worked nearly as well. Like Steve Martin did a great job, but it would have been just a very strange film.
Yeah, like I can 100% see David Bowie as Lawrence's character, but I cannot. I've never really seen Mick Jagger act in anything, so I cannot imagine him being the more comedic role.
Yeah, he I hear that there's this movie Performance that's really good. And I looked over at my VHS shelf because I was trying to remember the name of the second movie. Free Jack, some sci-fi movies, and he's not very good.
Okay.
Terrible.
That's
So
interesting. It would have been probably a block, like a huge hit. I mean, it already was like a blockbuster movie, but it would have been either way because it's Mick Jagger and Dave Bowie.
especially in '88. I mean, this is after Let's Dance came out. This is after I don't know what the Rolling Stones album around this time was, but it didn't matter with Mick Jagger. It doesn't matter. Um, yeah, number three. So him with number four.
The oh, so today when I was doing research, I found that there was a trailer for the movie that was made, and it was filmed before the movie had even begun being filmed. Apparently, it was like within the first few days of them arriving in France that they filmed this trailer. And they needed to have it to the trailer people uh, ASAP, basically. So Steve Martin came up with this idea to just have them film a trailer with him and Michael Caine walking through, a street in France where they filmed, and it was just like the camera was following them, and they're just walking down the street doing mischievous things. Like Steve Martin pushes an old lady into this like lake, and then um, Michael Caine's character, he shoves a piece of cotton candy, or like this cotton candy that this kid is eating. He like pushes it into his face as they're walking by. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and it wasn't used in the film at all. It was just specifically made for this trailer. Um, like I was kind of saying earlier, is that I didn't really think that the trailer did a good job at depicting the film just because it was so much more than like these mischievous, like naughty men. Um, if anything, I didn't really feel like we got a whole lot of like naughtiness. It was just more like con men, like strategic con men, if that makes sense.
They,
But it wasn't
they
like
were leaning really
mean.
heavily.
It wasn't like mean. So I don't feel like that trailer did a good job at depicting the film.
They were leaning really heavily into that dirty, rotten scoundrels name without the rest of the movie being ready.
Yeah.
That's got to be it. Number 5. Well, actually, before we go to number 5, do you prefer a trailer that has nothing to do with the movie over a trailer that shows everything in a movie?
Oh gosh. This is a hard one because I think it depends on what is going to sell it better. As a marketing person, I understand why certain things are done, and why trailers are made the way that they are sometimes. So it just depends on how good the movie actually is. I mean, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels was super good, right? So they wouldn't have had an issue either way. But yeah,
Okay,
they didn't have much
let me
years,
ask
I
you
don't
this.
think.
Since you've seen both trailers, I'm going to ask you a very specific question that maybe no one else will get.
Okay.
Would you prefer the trailer to Dirty Rotten Scoundrels that you just saw, or the trailer to Speak No Evil from 2023, 2024, whatever?
Okay. Okay. But Speak No Evil though, which I know you are hung up on until this day. Are you
That trailer gave away everything.
I know. I know. I mean, you're right. I The thing is though is like I guess when I watch a trailer, I don't really remember what's going to happen. Like I'm just watching the trailer and then it makes me want to see the movie. But then I like know I want to see the movie after I see the trailer and then I won't remember anything I saw in the trailer. So I think
I'm low
you
key.
come from it and from a different way where you'll remember everything you see in the trailer, and then you don't want to see the movie because already know the ending because it showed it in the trailer.
It's unfortunate. I wish I could just forget it because the Iron Trap, I'm always like, oh, this is the trailer part. This is the part I saw. And it ends up being the most important part. And you're like, oh, oops.
I think you're just too in tune. You gotta be more forgetful.
That's what they said when I tried to be a boy band singer, too.
What? What does that even
uh,
mean?
who knows, man? No, number 5. Donald Pleasance met with Michael Caine during the filming to play bowls, as the set was next to his favorite bowls pitch. Bowls, of course, is a game somewhere between bowling and bocce ball. I bring this up because we love Donald Pleasance on this podcast,
Oh yeah.
and anytime I can bring up Donald Pleasance, I'm going to. So he got to meet with Michael Caine, and the fact that he plays bowls, Boules, by the way, for anyone looking this up, just adds to the mystique of this man. And he has a favorite bowls pitch, which is like a field for bowls. That's wild to me. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
does someone out there like do they play like frisbee golf and they're like, this is my favorite is frisbee golf field, and I will visit whoever is next to that just so I can play frisbee golf. And I know now that I'm asking that question that the answer is easily a
And
yes.
we learned this in Eugene, living in Eugene,
Yeah,
because
that's why I bring up
people
frisbee
are
golf.
so into it here. There's
Yeah,
whole
that's true.
parks dedicated to frisbee golf. That's the right terminology, right? Frisbee golf. Yeah. But yeah, I'm always surprised
Disc
by
golf
stuff like
maybe.
that. Like I met people here who are like avid croquet players and I'm like, "You're croquet? Like what?" And they have like a
Good for
whole
you.
they built like a whole like field in their backyard just for croquet. So
I
Yeah,
I'm not even making fun of these people. I'm kind of jealous just to be able to get that into a sport that you have your own little niche community. That sounds really sick.
it
Um,
does. It's actually super cool. And then just now looking at Donald Pleasance, I kind of see him in a different way. And I'm like, wow, he does look like somebody who would play bowls, even though I still really don't know what that is.
oh, good old Loomis just playing bowls while he's waiting for Michael to get out of the penitentiary. Okay, we'll move on.
Well, I did say,
Back to Dirty.
okay, I have to say one more thing though. I did
Go.
say when I was looking at his picture, I said he does give bowling vibes, but I guess it's just bowls vibes. Okay, my joke's done.
That's the trench coat. With the trench coat, it could be bowling. It could be you could remove. Anyway, we're gonna move on.
Slasher.
uh, Thank you. Let's go back to Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Let's talk about the other parts that make a movie. Let's talk about the cinematography. Let's talk about the creativity of the shots. Let's talk about the creativity of the scenes. Um, I can start us off here if you'd like, but just saying that Frank Oz has a wonderful eye for establishing shots. The establishing shots were all very pretty. And his ability to frame things symmetrically within a scene. I think about that montage that you were talking about earlier, the pretend to be rich montage, and every shot in that montage looked amazing. I think about every single time he would just flash to a random building or flash to a random field or flash to the random ocean shot, and only to establish where you are, but it looked so good. I actually thought for a comedy film, this film looked wonderful. And maybe it was just the Blu-ray restoration. If so, shout out to shout out to Shout Factory. That's funny. Because they did a wonderful job. But also, he just he has a good eye for photography
Yeah.
alone. Um, so just off the bat, I thought it was a very pretty movie.
Yeah, I agree. I loved the color composition, the contrast. Um, I feel like he really liked playing with landscape, the moon, the beach, buildings, architecture. Um, and something I really appreciated about the film was it kind of felt like it was a film from the 1950s, just with
Hmm.
the different ways that it was shot and the different types of lighting that he used. And even like the grain in the film, I don't know if that was like, if it was just 80s or what, but it was like the, the grain of the film combined with the colors that they chose to use, it just felt so like 1950s to me because there were like a lot of bright colors. And I mean 80s does get a reference the 50s a lot, but that was just something I noticed, and I agree it was really pretty. And I appreciated kind of his, yeah, his use of color and nature and scenery. um, Yeah, and I feel like the city did a lot of work too, like the landscapes
Hmm.
that he chose. But it also takes a good eye to choose those like landscapes. You know what I mean? Like to know where
Yeah,
it's a good
100%.
spot to shoot. So
I think one of the scenes that I think really shows off what you're talking about, the 50s kind of look, is really early on when we're seeing Lawrence trick his first what do you call them when they're ladies? They're called Johns when they're men. Maybe they're called Johns when they're ladies too.
Jane,
The people Janes. So he tricks his first Jane at the casino, and he goes onto the back patio and he's looking up at the sky so dramatically, and she goes out there like, "Did I hear him say Your Highness?" And that looked like a shot straight out of a 50s noir movie, like one of the end 50s noir endings where the lady's in love and she wants to go kiss this guy, but Instead, we end up with him jumping into a bush for no reason, which was really great comedy. And the lady gets shoved into a bush like every other second. So they managed to keep it funny while still looking phenomenal.
Yeah, and like the bush against her back, which sounds really weird, but the bush like the composition of like the color of the bush and her skin and her dress and everything, it was clearly done on purpose. And it was hilarious that she was getting pushed into a bush, but you definitely knew why they were doing it. It just made the
Mhm.
scene look so much more interesting.
This movie does not lack for interesting scenes for interesting scenes either. I mean, I think about every single time we see Steve Martin as Ruprecht, just having him with his eye patch and the trident. It, it's a silly look, but it's a phenomenal look at the same time. I also think that Frank Oz uses symmetry a lot in these scenes. Like they're not perfectly symmetrical, but a lot of the times, whatever's happening that you're paying attention to is in the middle of the scene, and both sides are pretty close to even, and they're just composed very well. I agree with you 100% that whatever city, whatever town, whatever port they're in is doing a lot of the heavy lifting because it is just very pretty to look at and very interesting to look at, and it's busy without being cluttered. And the ocean is just such a wonderful sight. Wherever they shot this, which it is in France, I'm sure I could find it.
I want to go there.
Just wonderful. Yeah, straight up. I would sit outside of any of these places for just a second just to look at the scenery. And Frank does a great job at showing it off.
Yeah, I think I remember in the interview clips I was going through that this was a pretty expensive place to shoot. Like it was a really nice vacation spot and everything was just wildly expensive. So it was one of the executive producers. He was like, this was like my one of my first like really high paying gigs. And I think it was his idea to shoot there because he had like passed through there when he was traveling when he was younger. And he said, I started out this trip like thinking I was super rich and, you know, I was getting paid all this money to be the executive producer. But then after a few weeks, I realized I was not that rich at all. So, because it was just such an expensive place to live and shoot for them while they were there.
He's like, it was next level,
Mm-hmm.
even for him. Um, yeah, I mean, I, so throughout the whole film, it was very pretty. I don't remember any shots past that I would say were wildly creative in a sense. Like I don't remember anything else that wowed me just for looking completely different. It all just kind of looked phenomenal. Um, so this isn't necessarily a knock against the film. I just don't have anything specifically for creative. Now, I think there were a bunch of creative
Mm-hmm.
moments in the film as far as story beats, but as far as shots, it's kind of just how pretty this whole entire area is and how wonderful the framing is.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, I think the scenery and everything did a lot of the heavy lifting.
Mhm. Mhm. Um so let's talk about the editing and the pacing. So the editing, I will say immediately I didn't have any issues with the editing. The pacing felt pretty good to me. This isn't short for a comedy movie. It was an hour and roughly 50 minutes, which, not terribly long either. And I felt like it went by at a pretty smooth pace. Did you have any parts of the movie where, as you were watching, you were like, "Wow, okay, this is dragging a little bit," or did you feel pretty confident in where it was going?
Hmm. You know, maybe the beginning dragged the most for me. Like the beginning where they've, you know, you're figuring out who the different characters are and what they're all about. and then them kind of finally getting to that point where they meet Janet, which was, the main plot of the story was them trying to con this woman. Um, so I felt like maybe it dragged a little bit up to that point, but then the rest of the movie was just like it felt super fast, and it was
Mhm.
engaging pretty much the whole time. I feel like I there wasn't a time where I felt like I was bored or like it was dragging after that.
Yeah, my only 2 cents, and this isn't even necessarily negative things, I felt like sometimes the movie kind of shifted tone a little bit, and that might have been through editing. It felt like it went from over the top funny to more grounded, like buddy comedy almost. And I do think that it could have worked as either, and it worked as both too. So this isn't really a knock because I thought it was funny, and at the same time it was really good as a buddy comedy. But when I did see the lady in the beginning being pushed into the bushes, and then Michael Caine jumping into the bush for no reason, I was kind of a little excited that I was about to watch a new version of Airplane that I've never seen, or like Naked Gun, just something completely ridiculous and over the top. And it didn't really do that outside of a few scenes. Like the Ruprecht was definitely at that level.
Yeah.
Um, And for me, this is very personal. I love the really stupid comedy. So I think that it could have leaned a little bit more into the really stupid, and I would have found it a little bit funnier. Um, but that doesn't also feel like what they were going for. So that's a very personal nitpick.
Yeah, I agree. Now that you're saying that, I think, yeah, there were some parts where it felt like maybe it was a little inconsistent in tone for sure. Like they could have maybe stuck with one tone, like over the top or dramatic, instead of like going back and forth so much.
Hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Um, yeah, I don't know that I have anything else to say about editing and pacing. I felt pretty good about it as a whole.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was entertaining, um, super fun to watch. Yeah, wasn't bored.
Yep. Real quick, we're gonna hit up on it just to hit up on it. Sound. Did you have any issues with the sound? Did you have anything specifically that you liked or you didn't like?
I'm really bad at paying attention to sound. Um, I just, I'm so bad. I don't even pay that much attention to it. But what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that the soundtrack worked phenomenally. It didn't exactly wow me, but it worked for this sort of movie. I do feel like I've seen Putting on the Ritz in
Okay.
more Steve Martin movies, but I could be wrong about that. I feel like Steve Martin's been in other movies where Putting on the Ritz was in them, and that's nothing necessarily wrong with this movie. It made sense in this movie because he was trying to act rich, but a little on the nose in my opinion. But other than that, all the songs worked. Like it was funny in the right places with the songs. It was a little bit more dramatic. Whoever was doing the score was not necessarily wowing me, but they were hitting the right tones, right moods.
Yeah. And speaking of sound, Steve Martin made a lot of noise, so that's what I noticed the most.
That's true. That when for me, if I comment about sound in a negative way, it's usually a very negative way. Like one of the films I really love is Escape from New York, right? The sound in that movie is terrible. It's awful. And it's not the music per se, it's just all the ambient sounds are very inconsistent. And when people are running and they have like 3 footsteps, but they keep running for like 20 yards, it bugs me. I didn't have any issues with that here. Um, all right, so let's go to our last of the news sections. Your 3 favorite scenes of the film. The co-hosts. We can have repeats. It's fine. It's just your three favorite scenes of the film. So this is going to be super subjective. You just describe it a little bit, and if you're interested, you can tell us why it's your favorite scene of the film. Do you want to start, or would you like me to start?
You want me to do all three? Okay.
Yeah, let's do all three.
Okay. I would say my first favorite scene of the film was Steve Martin learning how to be rich, as I mentioned earlier. I just thought it was a super fun part of the movie where, Michael Caine's kind of teaching him how to walk and how to act, um, and it was just fun watching Steve Martin kind of fail at it because he's such a like goofy character in this movie. So I really appreciated that. And also, I think my absolute favorite scene in this film is Steve Martin eating at the dinner table when he is acting as Rubricht. Um, he is eating food and they're trying to impress this woman who they're conning. And Steve Martin's character is eating dinner and he has a wine cork at the end of his fork. And I'm sure he's improvising the whole scene, but I think he's eating like spaghetti or something or applesauce or something, right? And he just like scoops the whole fork into the applesauce and
Uh,
it's got the cork on it and then he puts the whole thing into his mouth and it's just I just loved it. I thought it was hilarious. I don't know why that scene stuck with me so hard, but
so silly.
it is. It's super silly. And then the lady, who's also the mom from 6 Feet Under, the lady they're trying to con, and she's super young in that scene. She's like, "Why does he have the cork at the end of his fork?" In her little voice, and Michael Caine is just like, "Oh, he needs it, or else he could hurt himself." And he's got like his eye patch on, and yeah, it's just awesome. And then Michael Caine whipping Steve Martin. Yeah, so that was a really funny scene when they were trying to con Janet, and basically Steve Martin is in a wheelchair, so that's his con character, and he's trying to um, work with the doctor, who is Michael Caine, to help him walk again. And Michael Caine is pretending to be this doctor, and he's testing out Steve Martin's legs. So he has this whip in his hand, and he clearly knows it's going to hurt Steve Martin because he knows that Steve Martin can walk and can feel things, but Janet doesn't know that. And so Michael Caine just starts going at him with this whip. And with every like whip, Steve Martin just has these hilarious expressions on his face. And it's like, and then every time Michael Caine is like, "Did that hurt?" He's like, "No." But he's like trying to play it off like, no, didn't hurt. I didn't feel that. I don't feel anything because I'm paralyzed, but he's really not. So that was, yeah, that was super funny. Those are my three favorites.
All pretty darn good scenes. My three favorite scenes are the first is the scene where Freddie is watching Lawrence dance with Janet in the dance hall, and the sailors in the background are becoming increasingly frustrated and angry. I really enjoyed this scene just because if you can imagine from the sailor's point of view, they're watching a fellow sailor being mocked for not being able to dance with his
Oh, I
girlfriend
love that scene. Yeah.
while he's in a wheelchair. And that's not even including like the idea that the one thing that really messed up Freddie was in Janet's mind and was that he had seen his ex dancing with the instructor. So it's just like layers of
Naked.
ridiculous trauma. Yes. And so he's just watching this, and these sailors, you can watch them getting frustrated and angry. It's just their facial expressions. I thought it was hilarious, and it was just such a good buildup of wow, Lawrence looks like such a jerk right now, and he's gonna get what's coming to him, and they're both jerks, so he doesn't. But wonderful
I
scene,
also
loved it.
loved how Lawrence, when he was dancing with Janet, he just kept looking at Freddie, and he's just like smiling, but he has no idea like what the sailors behind Freddie are saying. He's like about to get his
Mm-hmm.
butt kicked,
Mm-hmm.
basically. It's
Mm-hmm.
so funny.
He's like signing his own. He's signing his own butt kick warrant. My second favorite scene, and this is a little bit cheating. Most of the Ruprecht scenes are hilarious. I would say you gotta love the Ruprecht scenes. They're just so over the top, so goofy. Um, I'm a fan of a good pun, and when Freddie asks Lawrence, he says, "Can I go to the bathroom?" And then he says yes, and then you get that pause with just Freddie looking up, going, and then he looks over and says, "Thank you." Clearly implying that he is urinating currently.
Oh,
Uh,
funny, because I was thinking pooping.
I mean, it could be. It could
I
be. It would be really
That's
quick in my mind.
funny. That's so funny. I immediately thought pooping, and you thought peeing. Huh? Interesting.
Either way, it's just it's a silly, silly little pun that they use at the exact right timing to make it hilarious, And whenever you can use a pun and you can actually make it funny, I say go for it because usually they're not very funny. Trust me, I know. And then my third favorite scene is the scene where Lawrence masterfully deals with one of his ex cons by that was addressing him as Your Highness outside of the hotel when he's picking up Freddie and Janet,
Yeah.
and he is able to convince her that his accent is because he's undercover and that Janet's one of them. And then on the other hand, he goes, "Oh, she's one of my patients." Uh,
So smart.
because it's such a sticky scenario, and it is so funny because if you imagine it through Janet's eyes and through everyone else's eyes, this lady looks bananas saying "Your Highness" and
Bowing
bowing down to him.
completely. She did. Yeah.
And it was clever because at that moment you're like, oh no, he's caught. Oh no, he's gonna have to explain, and he just gets out of it in like 3 words. He's like, no, I got this. It's easy. She's one of my ex patients. And it's just a clever setup all the way around, and it's hilarious. And yeah, I love those scenes. Those are my three favorite scenes, mind you. This movie had a lot of really good scenes to choose from. I like it when a movie's got a lot of really good scenes to choose from because the three that you talked about are also wonderful. I was laughing thinking about the cork. It's goofy. So, um,
They're really clever. Like the director and the writers, they were really clever with this movie.
hmm
I
hmm
felt like I was constantly surprised with the ideas they came up with.
let's go ahead and move into our reviews. So I'll go ahead and I'll go first. So I use a rubric that's posted online on the Instagram if you want to see it, but it's essentially all this pieces that we've talked about here. I grade them out of 5. So for story, I'm giving it a 4. I thought the story was pretty creative. It hit a lot of beats that I wouldn't necessarily have guessed it would, and it had a pretty nice little twist. I hadn't read the twist beforehand either, so that was pretty sweet. Um, yeah, just solid all the way around. The acting, I'm giving it a 5 because I can't point to a single time that I thought anyone was acting poorly, even the extras. And I'm just going to be honest, Steve Martin's level of exertion that he put into this movie to make it all work, and Frank Oz's willingness to use
Yeah.
the ad-libbed lines, wonderful. So I'm giving it a 5 for acting. Creativity slash cinematography, I'm giving that one a 4 because I love those establishing shots. There could have been maybe a little bit more creativity used in some of the shots. Like the photography of the establishing shots was wonderful. The photography of the scenery was wonderful. However, I feel like Frank Oz didn't necessarily invent any of it. He just found it. Am I being unfair and arbitrary? Maybe. That's why it's a review. It's subjective. I'm not an expert, so 4. It's a pretty good score. Pacing, 4. we talked about it. I didn't really have any issues with the pacing per se, besides maybe the slight tone switches. When something has tone switches like that, it's hard for me to give it a perfect score, but otherwise solid. It didn't feel like it dragged at all. Um, 4 out of 5, and then sound, I'm giving it a 5, which is a wonderful score because I felt like the soundtrack really just did a good job of conveying the emotions of the film. So overall, that's giving me an 8.8 out of 10. I'm rounding that up to a 9 out of 10. That's a wonderful score. So 9 out of 10 for Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. That means I am saying you should check it out. What you
Yeah,
got,
I think
James?
that's a really good score. And I did not do the rubric, but I was thinking about the same number. Honestly, I was thinking it deserves a 9 out of 10 because it was so clever and the jokes were funny. Steve Martin was amazing. The cinematography, super pretty. Clearly, the director and the creative director have an eye for film, and capturing people's attention in that way. Um, I'm trying to think of, yeah. I mean, I just thought it was a really good film all around, and I think most of my rating is coming from the writing and how it just kept me engaged the whole time and it made me laugh. Because, yeah, I don't know. The humor was just awesome. And I feel like, especially being a film that's 40 years old, I am amazed that it made me laugh as much as it did. The jokes are still
Uh,
relevant. The jokes are funny. They remain funny. So I was surprised by that because I feel like it takes me a lot to laugh as much as I did during that movie.
they have one really poignant quote that I think still is applicable to this day, and it's a question that Steve Martin, well, it's more of like an observation Steve Martin makes really early on in the film to Lawrence, and he says, "I never really knew how far you could get with this scamming thing." And if you live in America in 2025, I think you understand how far people can get with the scamming thing.
Yeah,
I laughed at that just because I was like, well, and you still don't really understand because if you could go forward 40 years, you definitely get it. Um,
it's so true. And like, it's just, yeah, it's just like a whole other world to me, like the scamming world. But yeah, I'm sure that to scammers, all that stuff in that movie is just normal.
scammers as a movie genre, in my opinion, has been wonderful. Did you ever see the movie Matchstick Men?
I don't think so.
That's a Nick Cage movie. Nick Cage, Sam Rockwell, Elisa Lohman, Allison Lohman, even, and it's all about con men, and it's a wonderful film. I think that con men just makes good movies for some reason. Who knows?
Yeah, and I just love how sort of strategic it is. You have to think about, yeah, how the characters are going to be conned. And Michael Caine, he was clearly more educated, experienced con man. So he like planted people and that kind of thing. Yeah, it seems like the options are limitless and like the creativity in conning is limitless. I'm like kind of interested in it. It just feels like a magic trick. That's kind of what it felt like throughout the movie. It was like a magic trick throughout because it's like, I don't know, the ways that they were conning people, it's not anything I would have ever thought of.
That's wonderful. Um, do you have anything else before we close this one out?
I think that's it.
Heck yeah. Okay, so our next film will be with the lovely Janice once again, and we are going to do what we've only done once before. That is, we're going to watch a movie that will be in theaters when we release the podcast. We are going to review the movie Together that comes out on July 30th, directed by Michael Shanks, starring Dave Franco and Allison Brie. It is a horror, body horror, psychological horror comedy is what it's listed as. That just it's had wonderful trailers at the very least, and it seems like a pretty fresh movie for what it is. So we'll be reviewing together. So please go watch it in movie theaters. Talk about it online or what? Don't. It's neither here or there. But then come and listen to the podcast afterwards, and you can catch our opinions on it.
Yay! I'm excited about this movie.
It should be pretty good.
I always love
I can't think of
movies
a person.
that combine romance and horror.
I can't think of a better person for me to watch it with either. So
Together forever.
I've got culture coming out my ass.
Me too.